Unexpected turn. How I took back control and exposed a Harvard hacker from an ATM dream. As Sarah stared at the screen, an array of lines of code flickering before her, the weight of a harsh reality pressed on her chest. She was drowning in responsibility. It had been 3 weeks since her mother's passing, and now her father's health weighed heavily on her mind. Each keystroke felt like a row of bricks stacking higher, suffocating her as she tried to pull together her life as a software engineer while functioning as a caretaker. Day after day, she smothered her grief behind computer screens, only to feel more invisible against Colin's relentless rise, the charismatic face of their startup. Tonight was different. Exhausted by her relentless routine, tension clung to her every thought. Could she even face another day at work, competing against Colin's effortless charm? Was it fair that he basked in accolades while she was left to scour for any recognition? With a flick of her wrist, curiosity pulled her in a dark direction. She began searching for innovative coding methods, anything to boost her visibility at the startup. Unbeknownst to her, the rabbit hole would yield more than just new techniques. As the hours slipped away, a name she long respected morphed into something sinister. Colin. The web of dubious financial transactions sprawled before her. Disbelief twisted her gut. The man who had once mentored her, who had tilted at windmills beside her, was siphoning funds for his personal gain. The screen glowed ominously, illuminating her trembling hands. Her heart raced. One decision could undo everything she fought for. Would she expose him to save her career, or shield herself amidst her father's health crisis? Before she could gather her thoughts, the warning struck like cold steel. Colin's voice haunted her, echoing in her memory. "You think you have what it takes? Just a late bloomer in a game for the young." His words clawed at her insides. Colin had turned from mentor to adversary, a living emblem of privilege and deceit. Why did it hurt so much? Perhaps it was the realization that she had once admired a shadow, a facade built on foundations she now knew were rotten. As the deadline loomed for an important presentation, Sarah prepared her slides carefully. With each gradual movement, emotions swirled within her. Shame, anger, and desperation waged war against her determination. The boardroom would be the battleground that could expose Colin. Could she find the courage? What if her colleagues dismissed her as just another invisible woman in tech? A pulse of ice flowed through her veins. She needed this to work. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The day arrived. The room crackled with a charged atmosphere. As she stood before her colleagues, adrenaline sparked a fire in her veins. This was her moment to reclaim her narrative. Just as she felt a surge of resolve, a dismissive quip interrupted from the back of the room, triggering a cascade of doubts. The pang of fear gripped her, recognizing their dismissive stares twisted into disapproval, the tension thickening like fog around her. She faltered, faced with the stark reality of all she stood to lose. Behind her determination loomed a heavy silence, the weight of Colin's charm threatening to bury her once more. Balancing on the edge, she understood the stakes had never been higher. Would she allow herself to be shackled to the shadows, or break free and claim what was rightfully hers? This was not just a battle for honesty but a reckoning for her dignity and her father's legacy. As tension spiraled, she gazed into those critical faces, heart racing, as the drive to confront everything she had been fighting against surged within her. The moment her eyes met the boardroom's expectant gazes, a fire ignited within Sarah. Every doubt, every haunted whisper of Colin's voice faded into the background, replaced by an urgent clarity. She could no longer allow herself to be defined by his shadow. With her palms resting on the table, she grounded herself, readying for the unveiling of not just a project but the truth. Her presentation began with a simple overview of their latest application, cloaking the much darker intent beneath a facade of professionalism. But as Sarah detailed the features that made it innovative, a quiet confidence blossomed within her. She documented every ounce of her effort, illustrating how coding wasn't merely a task for her, but also a vehicle of personal expression, something Colin would never understand. As the slides transitioned, she bypassed the pleasantries and dove into something deeper. Charts and diagrams unveiled the discrepancies she had unearthed, anomalies in the financial reports tied directly to Colin's maneuvers. The room shifted as the truth slipped from her lips like cold steel, the atmosphere now crackling with crescendoing tension as disbelief swept through her colleagues. Each transaction pattern leads back to decisions shrouded in misrepresentation, she stated firmly, focusing on the faces around her. It's vital we examine the implications of such actions. With each passing moment, the energy in the room morphed, whispers of murmured disbelief clouding the once charismatic aura of Colin. She expected Colin to rise, to object, yet he sat seemingly paralyzed, the very personification of betrayal. The silence thickened, and Sarah knew this was her moment to push further. It's not just about numbers, she pressed on, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. It's about trust, integrity, and the lives affected by decisions made behind closed doors. Each word was a bullet striking true, a sharp reminder of the weight of power that twisted beneath the surface of their dreams. When she finally paused, she noticed the mixed expressions of concern and curiosity, each colleague wrestling with the gravity of the revelation she had unearthed. The brightest among them had never before witnessed this side of her, the side still bruised from loss but now fiercely unyielding. That as Colin emerged from his stupor, Sarah felt the weight of every eye in the room shift back and forth, anticipating his reaction. He was a seasoned manipulator, though, and his perfected smile began to creep back, disguising the panic she glimpsed in his eyes. "Sarah, you're making a mistake," he began, words smooth but strained. "You don't have the full context here." But she wouldn't allow him to derail her. "And you've hidden the context from everyone else," she shot back, unflinching. "The very foundation of this startup is built on integrity and teamwork. What you've done threatens everything we've worked for, everything we strive to achieve." With every word, Sarah chiseled away at the facade he had built. Doubt transformed into determination, allowing her the power she hadn't dared to summon prior. She turned to her colleagues. "I need you all to consider not just our goals but our principles. Do we uphold them or allow ourselves to be tainted by deceit?" As a murmur arose, she considered the weight of the moment. Her voice trembled with urgency and strength. This confrontation was no longer solely about Colin. It was about her evolution, her uprooting from the shadows of the tech industry where women like her often vanished. The boardroom went silent as Colin prepared to counter her words, but amid the storm of turmoil, Sarah felt an unexpected surge of clarity washing over her. She was ready to stand firm, rooted in her conviction. Perhaps this was her moment of reckoning, the clarity she had sought amidst personal loss, the boundary between victimhood and empowerment. But the outcome still hung in the balance, their response, Colin's defense, the board's decision. Would she remain unfaltering or stumble back into the shadows? As Colin opened his mouth, one question reverberated in her mind. Could this battle redefine everything she thought she knew about herself? And as she awaited the world's reaction, a flicker of trepidation burned bright alongside the thrill of the unknown. The time had indeed come to confront the consequences of revealing the truth. Colin inhaled deeply, his composed facade cracking as he prepared to respond. Each second stretched like a taut bowstring, and Sarah found herself grappling with the weight of what she had just unleashed. She was no longer just an employee defending her work. She had become a pivotal force in a looming battle for the soul of the company. "Sarah," Colin began slowly, his voice a carefully measured tone designed to placate, "you seem to have forgotten the environment we're in. This is a startup. Risk is part of the game, isn't it?" His backhanded dismissal reverberated in her ears, but something flickered within her. A fight simmered beneath the surface, stirring the resolve she had unearthed. Colin underestimated her, but that miscalculation would be his downfall. "Risk?" she echoed incredulously, her heart pounding with dual currents of fear and exhilaration. "You think that misrepresenting our financial situation and jeopardizing trust is a game?" The atmosphere thickened with tension, and she locked eyes with her colleagues, appealing to their sense of integrity. "We have a responsibility that transcends profit margins. Are we willing to sacrifice our values for the sake of ambition?" Colin's smile wavered, and in that brief moment of weakness, Sarah seized the initiative. She wasn't just fighting for her career. She was fighting for their collective future, for the vision they had all shared when they launched the startup. The time for hesitation was over. Colin seemed to wrestle with his response, and Sarah pressed on, gripping the podium to steady her trembling hands. She could feel her colleagues' eyes on her, a mix of trepidation and anticipation. The integrity of this company isn't just built on financial success. It's built on trust and transparency. If we compromise on that, we risk losing everything we have created. As whispers filled the room, she noticed Melissa, the head of HR, shift in her seat, her brows furrowing in contemplation. Sarah focused on that sign, noticing the shifts in the crowd, the growing alignment of allies. Perhaps Colin's power over them was waning, and the collective could finally rise from the remnants of deceit. Facing Colin again, she felt stronger, a current of energy thrumming beneath her skin. You talk about risk, but it's your actions that risk our reputations. Your choices may have fueled your ego, but they have put our lives and livelihoods on the line. I am not your pawn anymore. With each revelation, Sarah peeled apart the layers of Colin's deceit. Every decision drawn in shadows now needs to see the light. The shift was palpable. Skepticism turned into palpable intrigue among her peers. They leaned in, curious, eager to dismantle the wall he had crafted for so long. Does anyone in this room want to be associated with unethical practices? She asked, her voice rising above the gathering storm. The response was hesitant but clear. Nodding heads began to blanket the room. Sarah could sense a movement sparking within the board, as issue after issue echoed through the discussions. But even as the tide seemed to turn in her favor, Colin's eyes gleamed with a calculated cunning. You're making a grave mistake, Sarah, he warned, the charm of his demeanor molded by irritation, now rising like smoke. You won't win this petty battle. You need allies, and you're jeopardizing your own future. Do you really want to risk it all for this? His threat hung heavy in the air, and Sarah faced an unsettling swirl of emotions. The truth was liberating and terrifying all at once. Still, she absorbed the gravity of the moment, breathing deeply to temper her racing heart. She was finally taking a stand, but the consequences remained uncertain. I'm done being afraid, she asserted, her voice steady. Taking control of my narrative won't be easy, but it's the first step toward something far greater. The fate of this company and my career depends on this break from fear. But Colin wasn't finished. She felt the mounting pressure of his next move looming closer, ready to unleash whatever damage he could inflict. As she stood firm, poised at the precipice of her journey, Sarah faced a new dilemma. How far was she willing to go, and what allies were truly worth trusting? The stakes were rising, and the darkness surrounding Colin seemed to pulse with threatening energy, pushing her to question her next steps. With clarity and determination, she steeled herself for whatever was to come. Would she emerge victorious from the battlefield of manipulation, or would this confrontation set forth a series of consequences she could not predict? The moment of truth was fast approaching, and she had no intention of backing down. What lay ahead was as uncertain as it was exhilarating. The air crackled with tension after Sarah's declaration, the silence suffocating as every person in the room weighed the implications of her challenge against Colin. Sarah was acutely aware of the shifting loyalties. She could feel it in the minute movements of her colleagues, from the way they glanced at each other to the subtle nods that began to form. Yet, amid their growing solidarity, self-doubt gnawed at her resolve. Was she merely inflaming an already volatile situation? Colin's eyes narrowed, his facade of calm replaced with a predatory glint. You're making a spectacle of yourself, he replied, the smoothness of his voice a stark contrast to the rising chaos. What do you think will happen if you continue down this path? You'll isolate yourself, and when this leads to consequences, stop. Each syllable was deliberate, cutting through his condescending rhetoric. I won't allow you to manipulate me any longer, or make me doubt my values. A newfound clarity settled over her as she realized she was not alone. Melissa, quietly supportive, had shifted her posture to lean forward. Other colleagues, emboldened by Sarah's stand, began to share her conviction. Don't listen to him, Melissa interjected, her voice rising above the tension. Sarah's right, we've built something meaningful here. The affirmation sent a rush of warmth through Sarah, a buoyant reminder that she wasn't just speaking for herself, but for the many who believed in their shared mission. But Colin was relentless. You're rallying behind a naive ideal, Melissa. This company is driven by profits, and without those we can't survive. He scanned the room, searching for allies amidst a growing divide. Sarah's heart raced, realizing the time for passive resistance was over. It wasn't enough to stand up against Colin. She needed to act. If money is the only measure of our worth, then we've already lost, she asserted, emotions igniting her words. I'm presenting an ethical framework that can guide us through these challenges while preserving our integrity. A few murmurs echoed across the packed room, but she couldn't rely solely on their support. She needed to dismantle Colin's stronghold. Colin's expressions oscillated between irritation and a twisted amusement, clearly calculating his next tirade. Show me how that works in practice, he challenged. What's your plan for navigating the financial pitfalls you predict? Dreaming about integrity doesn't pay salaries. The collective tension coiled tighter. Sarah inhaled deeply, her mind racing. It was time to utilize her skills and the research she decompiled in her spare hours. We can reevaluate our financial strategy within adherence to ethical standards. For instance, let us invest in community partnerships which will drive brand loyalty and cut costs in ways that unethical practices never could. Colin scoffed, but there was a flicker of uncertainty behind his bravado. She saw it and pressed forward. Think about it, donors, clients, they want transparency now more than ever. A strong ethical stance will differentiate us from competitors who prioritize profits over principles. With each point, she felt the naysayers begin to falter. Curiosity replaced some of their prior skepticism. Maybe this was the pivotal moment she needed to seize. If we pivot now, we can redefine our narrative. Rather than being seen as a startup willing to cut corners, we would emerge as a model of responsibility in our industry. I think we're all tired of these constant questions, Colin. Another voice chimed in from the back. Let us hear more from Sarah. Every supportive word was a lifeboat in the storm, and Sarah recognized the talent blooming within her colleagues. The skills and knowledge they possessed, when harnessed, could bring this company to new heights. Suddenly, Colin stepped forward. You'll regret this, Sarah. This isn't a game of integrity. It's business. And business has teeth. The realization struck her that he was right. This wasn't just an intellectual exercise. It was a raw, fierce fight. Colin's threats loomed over her, but the galvanizing support around her filled her with strength. The decision hung in the air like an unsheathed sword. With adrenaline propelling her forward, Sarah knew she had to act decisively. Then let us see whose teeth are sharper. I'm ready to take this fight wherever it leads. As Colin stepped closer, anger radiating off him like an electric current, Sarah felt her heart pound in anticipation. The battle lines were drawn, and now she had to prepare for both the dark corners of office politics and the very real possibility of losing everything she had fought for. What would be her next move, and how far was she willing to go to keep her moral compass intact? The answer was obscured by the gravel of uncertainty, but in her heart, she felt something ignite, a fierce conviction that would either lead her to victory or unravel everything she held dear. Adrenaline coursed through Sarah as she met Colin's intense glare. A quiet storm brewed inside her, the familiar dance of doubt battling with her newfound resolve. She sensed the room's energy shift, and she knew she had to harness it. One wrong move could send her spiraling back into insecurity. Let us have a real conversation, Colin. Not just threats and accusations, she challenged, her voice firm despite the tremor behind her resolve. The weight of the entire organization suddenly lay on her shoulders, and she could feel every pair of eyes burning into her. This was not merely about her ambitions but the welfare of the team, their values, their future. Let us explore the numbers, she continued, scanning the room for teammates' reactions. What I propose isn't naive. It's a careful reassessment of our operations. I can lead a team to research case studies where ethical practices boosted revenue. Colin's brow furrowed, caught off guard as uncertainty flitted across his features. The audience of colleagues was considering her proposition, weighed down yet intrigued. That glimmer of hope fed into Sarah's courage. I'll put together a detailed plan, graphics, projections, testimonials. I want to demonstrate to everyone that we can grow without sacrificing our integrity. As she spoke, a wave of determination settled over her, and Sarah found herself mapping out her vision, even as she was still processing the sheer audacity of this confrontation. The memories of late nights spent researching ethical business practices mingled with the isolated experiences that brought her to this point, facing a bully like Colin. Her heart swelled to think of what if? What if she could truly make a difference? Are you really prepared to invest time and resources into this? Colin posed, his voice dripped with sarcasm. Or are you just stalling for time? Investing in values is not about stalling, she shot back, her mind racing through tactical frameworks she had learned. If we remain committed to our core principles, the investment will pay off. If I can show them our commitment to ethics, they will stand by us. Another murmur rippled through the audience. This time it was recognition, admiration. It felt like she was no longer alone. The potential for unifying her colleagues surged within her. But doubt still lurked. She didn't know if Colin's threats would escalate. What you're proposing would take months, Colin replied, shifting tactics. And while we sit here dreaming, competitors are out there making money. You're risking our livelihood on ideals. Maybe you're right, she admitted, taking a calculated risk. But what is the cost of our integrity? If we crumble under profit pressures now, we'll lose more than revenue, we'll lose ourselves. The room exhaled collectively, caught in this powerful juxtaposition of ideals. Her heartbeat steadied there, in that moment, amidst a swirling tempest of fear. The possibility that they could emerge stronger beckoned her. I will need a team. A crew that believes in this vision as much as I do, she declared, eyes darting to faces of hesitant colleagues. If you trust me, we can reshape this narrative. She took a deep breath, letting the silence wash over her. We must do it together. The air shifted again, the potential for collaboration was palpable. Colin moved back slightly, for once perhaps caught off balance. Before she could exhale relief, a hand shot up in the back. It was Mark, a valued programmer, and a voice of reason who had been quiet until now. I'm in, Sarah. I'll help. But you need to take the reins on this. A chorus of affirmations followed, each voice another stitch reinforcing the safety net Sarah now felt enveloped in. This was no mere argument. It was an invitation to lead. Yet, as she drank in the support, a wave of caution crashed over her. Would Colin retaliate? She had started something that could spiral out of control, perhaps even threaten her position entirely. The fear weighed heavy on her. Resolutely, she crafted her next steps while locking eyes with Colin. The stakes were rising, dangerously, and Sarah could feel the depths of a brewing storm, the type that could either elevate or entrap her. And it was now her responsibility to navigate through. She left the meeting. A sense of purpose enveloped her. The fight had just begun, and she braced herself for the winding path ahead. Behind every victory could lie another challenge, especially with Colin lurking in the shadows. What would happen when she unveiled her detailed plan? And was she truly prepared to have her ethics scrutinized under the harsh light of corporate ambition? The next move felt like stepping onto a tightrope, and Sarah was acutely aware that one misstep could lead her crashing down. The days that followed the meeting were a whirlwind of sleepless nights and frenzied preparations. Sarah dedicated herself to constructing a comprehensive plan, her vision transforming from abstract thoughts into concrete proposals. Each morning began with a quiet resolve, her coffee growing cold as data poured in from research, the glow of the screen reflecting a burgeoning sense of purpose. Yet, as the information began to materialize into presentations and documents, a nagging anxiety clung to her like a shadow. Her colleagues had rallied around her, a collective momentum that fostered hope. Mark was an invaluable ally, helping navigate the technical aspects while brainstorming graphic representations of the ethical case studies. They shared laughter and occasional frustrations, the bonds of camaraderie knitting closer with each late-night session. But alongside the excitement simmered a thread of doubt. Colin's looming presence became a specter, his skepticism like a mist that clouded her clarity as she explored data. Sarah discovered surprising insights: businesses that adhered to ethical standards not only attracted a loyal customer base, but outperformed their less scrupulous competitors in the long run. Each revelation fortified her resolve and grounded her growing obsession with proving Colin wrong. Yet late at night, when exhaustion threatened to seep into her bones, the fierce voices within her returned. What if her data went unrecognized? What if Colin sabotaged her efforts before they even had a chance to take shape? Each scenario curled into her thoughts, feeding a restless anxiety that gnawed at the edges of her confidence. Determined to put these doubts to rest, she devised a strategy: an early presentation to a small group of trusted colleagues. This would give her a chance to refine her argument, iron out any flaws, and perhaps alleviate her fears. She scheduled the meeting, dismissing the ache in her stomach that warned her of potential setbacks. As the day approached, she pored over her slides, focusing intently on her narrative arc. She visualized her words, the reactions, the moments when recognition flared in her colleagues' eyes. In those moments she felt an undeniable thrill. She became the architect of something greater than herself. Her vision could become their collective ambition. When the meeting day arrived, the room felt electric. A small gathering of her team members lent her their ears, and as she stepped to the front, the world outside dimmed. This was her opportunity. With an opening breath, she launched into her presentation, the vision flowing smoothly as she unveiled her findings. The feedback was immediate and positive. Nods of understanding and murmurs of excitement bounced off the walls. Each glance exchanged filled her with courage, the storm of self-doubt beginning to give way to a burgeoning storm of engagement and interest. But just as Sarah felt herself rising in confidence, the door opened abruptly, and there stood Colin. He surveyed the room with an air of indifference, his presence a chilling reminder of the obstacles yet unarrived. "What is this?" he questioned, a tight-lipped smile curling his mouth as he assessed the scene. "An impromptu brainstorming session in my absence?" The room shifted, tension coiling like a spring. Instinctively, Sarah's heart raced, alarm bells ringing over the sudden disruption. Yet there was no retreat. She was not about to falter now, not in front of those who had begun to believe in the dream. Colin's unexpected entry meant it was time to confront the antagonist looming in her plans. "Actually, we're discussing ethical practices that can transform our approach to growth," she replied, channeling her earlier resolve. His eyes narrowed with disbelief, the laughter of previous conversations replaced by a mounting conflict. "You mean your little fairy tale? Are you deluding them into thinking ideals can fill their pockets?" Sarah squared her shoulders, emboldened by those around her, every voice in support amplifying her own. "It's not fairy tale, Colin. It's a framework backed by data and the belief that integrity opens doors wider than short-term profits." In that moment, Sarah recognized the definitive shift. This was no longer just about statistics or figures. It was a battle for recognition, respect, and redefining her professional worth. The stakes were higher than ever, and she could feel the pulse of her team behind her, solidifying her resolve as Colin stepped forward. The challenge before them crystallized. Would her team unite to stand behind her vision, or would Colin's insistent doubt splinter their resolve? Sarah prepared for the next volley, tension coursing through her veins. It was the moment to expose not just Colin's arrogance but to show her team the power of their collective fight, a fight that now felt palpable, tangible, and unavoidable. Could she steer the tides in her favor against Colin's antagonism? The answer felt like a ticking clock, and the inevitable confrontation loomed closer than ever. As Colin stepped further into the room, a palpable unease settled over the gathered colleagues. Sarah could sense the shift in energy. Their initial support was now clouded by uncertainty. In that moment, Sarah made a choice. No longer would she shrink before Colin's imposing skepticism. She invoked the data she had painstakingly gathered not only as numbers but as stories waiting to be told. "We know that ethical practices yield long-term success," Sarah asserted, her voice steady but tinged with conviction. "You can dismiss this as naive, Colin, but the businesses that prioritize integrity see impressive growth. I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm showing you the evidence." Her heart pounded, but the fire in her determination stoked her courage. Colin's smirk faltered, replaced by curiosity. "Are you suggesting this small collection of studies can convince me that integrity trumps profit in an unforgiving market?" "Yes," she replied sharply, redirecting his gaze back to her slides. "Here, look at our competitors. Those who prioritize ethical practices have not only improved their reputations, but have strengthened their financial outcomes year after year. We would be wise to align our strategies accordingly." She pressed on, unfurling the projections of how their profit margins could transform should they adopt a progressive business model, fueled by ethical considerations. The momentum in the room began to shift, the atmosphere thickened with intrigue rather than doubt. Yet as she continued her presentation, she felt Colin's presence like a weight, pressing against her resolve. Her instincts urged her to deflect his negativity, and as if reading her thoughts, he interjected, "Emotional appeals win over stakeholders. Numbers are what drive decisions. Your emotional narrative could cost us dearly." His words sliced through her confidence, yet they also ignited a spark of defiance. The impending threat of his dismissal compelled Sarah into a deeper reflection on her professional identity. She became acutely aware that this wasn't merely a defense of her proposal. It was a testament to her capabilities. "While I understand your apprehension regarding short-term gain," she replied, her voice steady and measured, "what if I made the numbers even clearer? What if I could show that investing in ethical practices could actually reduce operational costs in the long run?" The silence that followed was thick with tension. Sarah had shifted the narrative from ethics as a philosophical ideal to a tangible strategy within the business model. The collective fidgeting of her colleagues indicated a cautious eagerness. They were invested in this conversation, and they were alongside her. Each nod from Mark fortified her stance, and she pressed on, building momentum. Colin's calculating eyes narrowed, the realization that she was no longer a passive player within his narrative simmering in the air. She sensed his attempt to regain control, undo authority that had stifled her before. "You're only seeing what you want to see, Sarah. It sounds good, but business doesn't run on fairy tales." "Then show me your data," Sarah shot back, emboldened. "Cite your sources and we'll evaluate both perspectives. We owe it to our company to fully explore the potential of ethical initiatives." The room, which had felt cold moments before, now hummed with collective anticipation. Colin huffed, but she could see the cracks forming in his facade. He wasn't used to being challenged in this manner. As he opened his mouth to respond, Sarah's mind raced not only with the realization of her latent strength, but a recognition of how far she had journeyed from the young woman plagued by doubt. Was her professional identity shaped by the opinions of others? Or was she instead the architect of her own narrative, poised to draw from her insights and those of her team? Sarah leaned forward, her tone now resonating with the undeniable vitality of her aspiration. "We have the chance to pioneer a new method. One that doesn't just follow the tide but creates it." As she completed her points, the air settled into a thick anticipation that the entire office had unwittingly participated in a pivotal moment. The stakes had escalated, and her desire to reclaim her voice was palpable. But amidst this burgeoning confidence, a new discovery gnawed at her, a question lurking in the back of her mind. If she could redefine her professional worth and advocate for an ethical stance, could she also face the personal identity she had buried beneath layers of doubt and fear? The whirlwind of thoughts swirled as Colin appeared momentarily off balance, doubt flickering beneath his brow. In that moment, Sarah realized the capacity for growth extended far beyond the boardroom. As she prepared for his reaction, a slow wave of determination surged within her. This was the moment that would ultimately define her, not just against Colin, but against the remnants of the old Sarah who had hesitated to speak her truth. What was next? The confrontation was spiraling, and the unexpected turn of events just might unearth revelations she was not yet prepared to face. Colin's eyes narrowed, assessing Sarah not just as a colleague but as an adversary. Despite the intellectual volley exchanged, a part of her still feared what he might unleash next. How could brandishing her newfound resolve make her bulletproof against the machinations of a rival with such experience? "Look," he began, his tone shifting to one of condescension again, "I commend your zeal, but we need more than optimism to base our strategies on. If you're going to put forward a proposal based on ethical practices, it needs an ironclad framework behind it. Otherwise, you'll find yourself standing alone when it matters." The almost dismissive lilt of his voice cut through her emboldened state. Did he truly believe he could drag her back into the shadows of self-doubt? She took a breath, feeling the weight of the gaze from her colleagues. They were all witnesses, and their expressions were a tapestry of curiosity and concern. Each one felt like a reflection of her own fragmented self, oscillating between hope and fear. "Then let us build that framework together," Sarah said, surprising even herself with the conviction embedded in her words. "Rather than an adversarial stance, let us collaborate to flesh this out with creativity and analytical rigor. Have you forgotten that the biggest shifts don't happen just in board meetings and fiscal reports? They emerge from ideas all of us put forth." Colin frowned. It was a moment where the dynamic shifted again, this time, less challenging and more contemplative. Had her call for collaboration struck a chord? Or was it merely a pause before a larger counter-strategy? "All right, let us see what you've got," he replied, his tone less strident. But even in that concession lay an undercurrent of challenge. There was still a long way to go in proving that ethical practices could be defined precisely enough to be profitable without losing integrity. With newfound focus, Sarah resolved to dig deeper. After her presentation ended, she returned to her office, the hum of the fluorescent lights matching her racing thoughts. A flurry of ideas surrounded her, and she wasted no time. She wasn't just going to prepare her next proposal, she would outline every angle. What needed refinement? What data spoke volumes? Which case studies illuminated potential successes? As she pored over research, the surprise was how competent the process made her feel. It dawned on her. In her previous roles, she had often played it safe to avoid areas riddled with conflict or hesitation. But emerging from that past was something untamed and vibrant, a core that thrived on challenge. Each statistic acquired was a brick in the fortress she was building, not only as a businesswoman but as a formidable advocate for her beliefs. Days transpired, and Sarah found herself anticipating the next meeting. Each morning she sculpted her ideas further, her confidence burgeoning, while Colin grappled with her audacity. But the ultimate test awaited. Ready to put her conceptual framework to the test, could the numbers rally behind her aspirations? The day arrived, and Sarah walked into the meeting room armed with a refined proposal outline and a renewed sense of identity. Colin stood by his desk, flicking through paperwork, still holding a thin veneer of skepticism. "Let us see if your ideas hold water, shall we?" he challenged, gesturing for her to present. In that instance, she didn't just see an opportunity to defend her proposition, she saw the culmination of her journey. Professionals could rise, yes, but it was those who faced their identities that transformed themselves. As she began her pitch, Sarah felt poised to unveil not just statistics but a vision rooted in integrity and grounded in undeniable facts. What if she could turn the tide fully in her favor? This thought surged through her as she spoke, breathless with anticipation. The true battle lay not merely in numbers, but in the revelation of who she could become in the process of proving them right. Would the influence of her practical insights reverberate throughout the company, or would Colin's doubt anchor her before she broke through? The drone of her own voice receded as she entered a zone of clarity, and a realization crystallized with unprecedented intensity. The sway of true leadership is built upon the willingness to confront uncertainty head-on. As Colin leaned forward, poised to respond, Sarah grasped that this moment would reshape everything, not just for her, but for her peers irreversibly. Would her advocacy for ethical transformation make waves strong enough to alter the company's legacy? Or would she find herself swept away by Colin's relentless skepticism? The silence enveloped the room after Sarah finished her pitch. A palpable tension filled the air, and she could almost hear her heart pounding. Colin's expression was inscrutable as he leaned slightly back, fingers steepled together, considering. Her colleagues shifted, eyes darting between the two of them, a tableau of expectancy. "Interesting," he finally replied, his voice deliberately measured. But was it genuine? Or was he skillfully masking his disbelief behind practiced neutrality? The uncertainty gnawed at her. In that moment, Colin was not just her colleague, he was a gatekeeper of progress, someone who could either pave the way for her vision or seal it away in the archives of failure. She decided to take a risk, a calculated one. "I know that my approach might seem idealistic," she began, meeting Colin's gaze directly. "But let us look at the companies that have thrived by prioritizing ethical commitments. Ben Jerry's, Patagonia. They understand their values translate into customer loyalty and profitability. We could build a model that positions us as a leader for a new generation of consumers who demand integrity from the brands they support." With each word, the room shifted. She felt the presence of her peers behind her, support and skepticism tangled in their expressions. She forged ahead, tapping into the emotional reservoir she had unearthed in herself. This isn't merely about ethical practices. This is about transformation and engagement. Engaging a customer base that's looking for authenticity in a sea of corporate masks. Are we ready to become that beacon? The flicker of uncertainty in Colin's eyes hinted that her argument was landing. Yet she couldn't afford to relent. "Sure, we could choose the safer route, hold values up like shields and duck from competition. Or we can redefine how we engage with our market, harness our ethical stance to create real connections." A moment of silence hung heavy as Colin absorbed her words, his mind obviously working through the implications of what she just presented. "Okay," he replied slowly, Let us say I'm inclined to investigate your idea further. What's our starting point? Unless you present me with a definitive plan, all this is just talk. There it was, the challenge wrapped in an invitation. That Sarah's heart raced. Rather than falter in spontaneous panic, a fresh surge of determination ignited within her. This was her opening. Our starting point involves metrics, defining clear objectives and benchmarks. I suggest we consider a pilot program that integrates community-focused initiatives. With solid data backing our ethical claims, it would attract not just attention but investment from stakeholders. As she spoke, Sarah's voice gained strength. She wasn't just defending her proposition. She was crafting a path forward, illustrating a journey where she wasn't just a participant but a leader. Colin was no longer the adversary. He was the foil against which she was sharpening her vision. Her colleagues seemed visibly engaged now, shifting in their chairs, nodding subtly as Sarah elaborated her plan with passion and precision. The initial tension began to dissolve into an atmosphere of collaboration, a subtle but crucial shift in dynamics. The unbreakable fortress of self-doubt started to crumble, minuscule pebbles falling away as confidence grew. Colin, still calculating, suddenly leaned in. It's clear you're passionate about this, but passion alone won't suffice here. I want to see a detailed framework drafted by next week, your proposal presented in a quantifiable model. Let us see if it holds against the scrutiny of reality. His challenge felt new, not a dismissal but a legitimate request for substance. Sarah nodded, her mind already swirling with potential revisions, additional angles to explore. She felt a rush of clarity. This was where she could thrive. The impending pressure transforming into fuel for her ambitions. I'll have it ready, she said firmly, feeling her resolve crystallize into something unmistakably powerful as she left the meeting room, adrenaline coursing through her mind danced with ideas. Progress was tangible now, not just a distant dream, but a rightful claim on her professional identity. But lurking beneath this newfound motivation was a query, an unsettling one. Was she truly prepared for what lay ahead? Facing Colin had only invigorated her. But now the real test awaited her in turning this framework from words into actionable outcomes. Would she be able to sustain this momentum, or was the fear of failure whispering caution too loudly in her ear? The next meeting would not just test her ideas, it would test her resilience. Would she rise to dominate her corner in the professional arena, or would the shadows of doubt cling to her once again? Weeks passed since that pivotal moment in the boardroom, and Sarah found herself standing on the brink of validation. With her meticulously crafted plan in hand, she had transformed vague hopes into concrete steps toward a new ethical framework for the startup. The bustling atmosphere around her felt electric, born of anticipation and possibility. She had defended her vision not only against Colin but against the ghosts of her past insecurities. The thrill of progress invigorated her. The palpable shift in dialogue during meetings bore witness to a collective awakening, her colleagues now engaged, deliberating not merely on profitability, but also integrity. Yet, amid this remarkable transformation, she remained acutely aware that mile markers on her journey demanded continuous fortitude. As she prepared for the much-anticipated presentation where she would unveil the details of her comprehensive framework, Sarah found herself reflecting on her evolution. From that woman who hesitated under Colin's scrutiny to a determined leader ready to reshape their ethos, she had undergone a metamorphosis deeper than she had once imagined possible. It wasn't merely about winning the board's approval, it was about being seen, recognized, and trusted. The day arrived, the room brimming with faces eager for clarity on the direction of their future. Confidence surged within her as she took her place at the front. She had not only studied the mechanics of business, but had woven together a tapestry filled with truth and integrity, elements essential to their culture. Her slides reflected a journey through data-backed insights paired perfectly with compelling narratives, stories of success rooted in ethical practices. Thank you for gathering today, she began, her voice unfaltering. We stand at a crossroads where the choices we make today will not only define our financial future, but also the legacy we leave behind. As she unveiled each layer of her framework, nods spread across the room. Discussion trees branched from her proposal, sparking enthusiasm amongst colleagues who never before imagined ethics could align so seamlessly with profitability. Each moment solidified her standing within the company and ignited flames of collaboration amongst her peers. Gradually, Colin's presence loomed less ominously. The defense he had once wielded like a shield was now being scrutinized, just as she had been. Tension hung lightly in the air, but her resolve remained steadfast. She had taken control of her narrative, and there was no turning back. Imagine a company, Sarah continued, where our principles are not just the basis for our mission, but the driving force behind our growth. A venture capitalized on community partnerships, transforming our business model to create shared value. Here lies the path toward sustainable success. Colin shifted, brow furrowed, but as she detailed their potential trajectory, it was clear his smirk had morphed into contemplation. While he challenged the feasibility, she was equipped with answers, projections, benchmarks, and real-world examples showcasing ethical innovators who excelled. When the presentation concluded, the applause was not just for the proposal, it was a recognition of the transformation Sarah had undergone as an individual. The validation she craved was palpable. She had emerged as a leader who evoked confidence, a female role model reshaping perceptions within the startup. In the days following, as the board voted unanimously to adopt her framework and initiative, recognition flowed in torrents. External validations came through partnerships securing grants for ethical development within their community initiatives. Sarah's name began to warm an atmosphere once dominated by Colin's shadow, and professional accolades followed. She was invited to speak at conferences, sharing her insights on integrating ethics with business strategy. Yet the true triumph lay within. Sarah reveled in her newfound identity, no longer clinging to insecurity, but embracing the strength of her professional voice. Her father's health stabilized, and their familial bond grew robust. Navigating through grief had fortified her resolve and unveiled a fierce advocate. She now championed initiatives in tech that provided mentorship for women entering the field, igniting passion in the next generation, while acknowledging the personal journey that had molded her resilience. As she crossed the threshold into this new chapter, the realization dawned she had not only conquered the corporate battlefield, but had paved the way toward a transformative future grounded in values. Her dedication illuminated a path for others to follow, a legacy stronger than merely numbers could measure. There, fully realized in her accomplishments, Sarah stood proudly, confident in the narrative she humbly crafted. With a journey that began in doubt and turmoil, she had arrived at a place of clarity and purpose, emerging not just as a successful businesswoman but as an agent of change, a mentor, an innovator, and an inspiration. Now, for those who resonate with Sarah's story, don't let this journey end here. You need to subscribe now to our channel. Every click supports moving forward with stories of empowerment like this. You have the chance to leave a like now, and trust us, it feeds the algorithm that connects us to more stories of genuine perseverance. Every comment matters. Share your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey below. And don't forget, this is the moment to show your support. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness transformations just like Sarah's. Don't wait even one more second. Join the movement toward inspiration and achievement.